our Brown Bag Lunch series, and it's been going really well. And we're happy that the third year is going to be a little different. And we're starting out with one of our dynamic thinkers on campus. And I'm really happy to have the opportunity to have a conversation. And we call this community building conversations, so that the community can learn about people that they've been working with over the years, but in a more deeper level of knowing who these people are. And so our guest today is Matt Segall. And I'll let Matt kind of introduce himself to everyone, and then I'll have an opening question that'll lead us into the next hour. So our Brown Bag Lunch series is a lunch series that takes an hour, and hopefully we'll walk out of here knowing much more than when we started. So welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Denise.
And tell everybody about yourself and how long you've been on campus here, too.
Sure, yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me as your guest today. And it's been great to get to know other members of our community at past Brown Bag events. So it's exciting to be in the hot seat myself today. I've been at CIIS first as a student since 2008, fall 2008. Started just as the financial crisis got underway, and came out here with a lot of uncertainty about that, about my own future. And I started the master's program in the philosophy, cosmology, and consciousness program. And went on to do my PhD after a bit of a struggle to decide whether I should stay or not. Maybe later we can get into why I decided to stay to do my doctoral research here. And while I was a doctoral student, I started working as a student worker in the PCC office as the program assistant. And eventually, when my predecessor, the predecessor from my former job as the executive assistant, went on maternity leave, I filled in as a temp. And then she decided not to come back. And they did a search, and I applied, and I got the job. And I did that job for about 2 years and 2.5. And then just recently stepped into the manager role in the office of the provost, working with our new provost, Liz Bevitt. And we're both learning about our new positions together.
What a journey.
Yeah.
You said you came out here. Where did you come from?
South Florida, Hollywood, Florida, which I'm a little worried about my hometown right now. It's a huge, I guess the biggest, one of at least the biggest hurricanes ever reported in the Atlantic is headed straight for it. And my dad is still there, my stepmom, a couple cats, and millions of other people.
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah, Hollywood, Florida.
Hollywood, Florida.
Yeah.
And what were you doing in Hollywood, Florida?
So,
did you go to undergraduate school there?
I didn't. I went through kindergarten through high school there. I went to a school called Nova, which was integrated elementary, middle, and high school. So I was with the same group of 40 or 50 students. Some left and some new ones came, but all the way through for 13 years.
Wow.
It was great and challenging at the same time.
You still have them as friends?
Some of them. I mean, with Facebook now, you never lose touch with anyone.
That's right.
Again, for better or worse. And I went to college in Orlando, actually, 3 hours north.
Okay, not too far.
Just far enough away to kind of prevent my parents from showing up unannounced. But not too far.
Yeah.
I couldn't drive there and come home when I wanted to.
I love Florida. Yeah. And our hearts and prayers are with everyone there. And so how does philosophy fit into your life? You know, do you remember being a thinker in elementary school? Was that environment really conducive to thinking?
I was always a quiet kid, and it's because I was thinking about it.
Yeah. You're still quiet.
I am. Yeah. I mean, I'm an introvert. I didn't discover that I liked socializing and being part of the conversation until I came out here and connected with people who were more like me, spiritually, intellectually, and so on. But I think I had that kind of tendency to observe, take it all in, not just thinking about things, but feeling things, and just, being with my mom when I would go to work with her and just sort of observing the social dynamics and relationships that were unspoken in the workplace. A lot of memories of that. But I didn't get into philosophy proper until high school, when I had a teacher named Mr. Ennis, who taught in 11th grade. I took AP psychology with him, and then in 12th grade I took 2 courses with him, one in Eastern philosophy and one in Western philosophy.
Wow.
And that's not typical for high school.
That's right.
To take philosophy at all, much
That's
less
right.
to have that sort of cross-cultural form of it. So that got me into thinkers like Alan Watts, who was a professor at the earlier institutional incarnation of CIIS back in the 50s, and Carl Jung, and other thinkers that just kind of woke me up to the depth of insight into reality that sort of accessed and set me on that path.
And how did your mom feel about you choosing that field? Did you have conversations with your mother?
Oh, yeah. My mom and my dad were very open to me pursuing what I wanted to, but they certainly kind of tried to nudge me towards, medicine, law, the normal things that parents want their children to go into. And I thought about med school, and even went to the county morgue, saw some autopsies. Wasn't that into the idea of having to distance myself from the fact that this was a person, just to see how the doctors, the autopsy doctor would come in, put on his iPod, blast some tunes while he's cutting people open and stuff. And I guess if you do that every day, you kind of have to keep yourself whole. But I didn't want to get into that line of work. The idea of being a healer of some kind was appealing to me. Working with living people. Yes. But, so I considered counseling psychology because, my parents were like, do whatever you want, but you're going to have to earn a living. And philosophy has not really historically been very good at providing a living for its practitioners, unless you're lucky enough to make it in the academy. And I actually applied after I graduated college, and I majored in cognitive science and just followed my intellectual interests. But I knew I wanted to go to grad school, and my compromise was, okay, I'll apply to be a counseling psychologist. And I applied to Naropa University. And because I didn't have any hands-on experience, they said, your application's strong, you clearly got the theory down, but why don't you go volunteer at a homeless shelter or something for a year and then apply next year? So I didn't get into Naropa. And I thought about whether I wanted to do that or not. CIIS was already on my radar, the PCC program, so I applied. And
were you already on the West Coast?
No, I was still in Florida.
Oh, wow.
Naropa seemed more like a possibility because I had family in Colorado, and so the move was less daunting. But CIIS had already been on my radar. San Francisco being so expensive and not knowing anyone out here, it just seemed like too much of an adventure to embark on at that point. But eventually I just realized I should take the risk. I got accepted to the MA program and moved out here, and I'm so glad. And who knows, there are probably other paths I could have followed that would have been fulfilling, but this one certainly has been.
How has being here had an impact on your life? How has it changed your life?
I met my wife here, for one thing.
That was a leading question.
Yeah. But, you know, like I mentioned before, most of my deepest passions and interests were not something I could share with more than like one or two close friends. They're just too weird. And, I'm still an introvert, but I was even more of an introvert before I came here and found other people who I could connect with who had the same sense of something is not quite right about our society, and asking these deeper questions might transform our consciousness such that we can inhabit this world in a different way. And exploring those kinds of questions with others has totally transformed me, giving me a new sense of confidence in who I am that I didn't have before because nobody saw me.
Wow.
So.
And I've been kind of checking you out, that you have blogs,
Uh-huh.
and you do a lot of just conversations with folks all over the world now.
Yeah.
What a transformation.
Yeah.
So how did you feel about blogging and videotaping your conversations?
Yeah. So that all kind of started when I was an undergrad, a senior. One of the few people I did have these deeper conversations with was my roommate, and he graduated a year before me, or about 6 months before me, I should say. So I didn't have him to talk to late into the night about these ideas. And YouTube was just beginning to be a thing back then. This was before Google bought it, and it was not that many people were using it. It wasn't commercialized. It was just people posting little video blogs to talk about whatever. And I saw that there were some people doing philosophy on there. And it's like, oh, right. It's 11:30 at night. I'm not tired yet. I can talk to people.
Wow.
And that was 2007 when I started doing that. And I started blogging as well, engaging in discussion about everything and anything. I think that helped me to begin finding my voice. Being in dialogue with others really helped me understand what I thought. Putting my ideas out there, getting feedback, positive and critical feedback.
It's pretty vulnerable.
Oh yeah, it is. And the internet is often not a friendly place. People hide behind anonymity, and a lot of dark shadow material surfaces there. But I've been able to navigate through that, and I've made some great connections.
You have a following
of
folks? Yeah.
It's been helpful to have that social media platform to start teaching online courses.
Well, you just read my mind to the next question.
Yeah.
How does that help in being a face-to-face instructor, professor, Segall? How's that kind of environment encourage you to teach in the classroom?
I developed, I think, the skills of a diplomat. Being able to, I try to be in conversation with as wide a variety of people as I can. Doesn't always work, but I try. And being able to be diplomatic and at least give people the benefit of the doubt once or twice before it's clear this isn't going to work, I think helps provide a space that students can meet across differences in a classroom environment. So far, it's been online, teaching online.
So not face-to-face?
I haven't done that yet.
Oh, wow.
Single course.
So you're coming at it from a whole other, because my generation, it's all been face-to-face. Right. And so you're coming in with this hybrid, less, even more online than a hybrid, actually, because a hybrid is kind of bringing both worlds together.
Right. So, like in my course this semester, it's mostly discussion forum conversations, and then several times we'll do a Zoom where we do get face-to-face in a sense. And I wasn't that excited to teach online initially, to be honest, but now that I've seen how it can work, I'm less resistant. And actually, it facilitates a different kind of learning that isn't possible in the classroom. So you lose something, you gain something.
Tell me a little bit about that. What kind of learning?
So in the spring, I taught a course on German idealism. Ashton was in that course. And that is heady material. And I think, had we been in a classroom setting where the discussion would have been kind of off the cuff, verbal, we would have been fine. But students, I think, appreciated having the time to reflect upon their discussion post. And the written form activates a different part of the mind. And a lot of philosophy is, I think, textual. There are arguments that I couldn't articulate well just orally off the cuff. I need to be able to sit with pen and paper or keyboard and screen and work it out with myself. So being able to develop these really intricate thoughts, having the time and space to do so in a written discussion forum, I think allows for a different kind of depth, reaching deeper into the material than we may have been able to do if it was just a classroom discussion.
Like that. What has been the biggest challenge for you teaching online?
Just getting a feel for each student as an individual and what their needs are. It's easier for students to kind of check out. And if a student doesn't post one week in the discussion forum, then I might email them and see what's going on. If they don't respond to me, I can't stop them in the hall and check in on a sort of emotional level. So that intimacy is lost. And thinking back to my own time as a student, through all my years of schooling, back to elementary school, but even in college, that connection to a professor as a mentor, so important. And I think it's going to be a challenge, something that I need to, and other online faculty here will need to make an extra effort to reach out to their students to make sure that on an emotional, personal level, they're feeling connected to the school, to other students in their cohort, to the instructor. So I'm still trying to figure out how to be effective on that level.
Well, you're just starting, so that's right. And you're a brave person to walk into, but I think that this generation is almost demanding the flexibility of learning. And so this is a great time to get on board with that too. And that you could really come back and teach professors here, what you're learning from that and some of the skills that we need to apply to reaching out that could even be applicable in the classroom. Because I think that relationship is always so important. And we have a lot of quiet students too. I just was listening to an NPR TED Talk on quietness and the ability for us to appreciate the quiet student, the quiet learner, because we give a lot of attention to the extroverts, right? The folks who are talking all the time and, have so much to say, but the contemplative and quiet folks in the classroom get overseen. Do you look at student learning in that way? And, who's in the classroom and how do you support everyone coming in from many different learning styles?
Yeah, well, in a way, teaching online allows me to, in the way I set up the online classroom, each student will get individual feedback from me on their post each week. So it does allow me to kind of tailor the pedagogy to each student. The modality doesn't change. It's in the discussion forum. They make their posts, and it's mostly through text. Other than we might have an advising session on the side, or we do the video chat with the whole group. But it allows me to have basically a kind of one-on-one exchange, open to the rest of the class if they want to jump in too.
Right.
But I just had the first module of my online course end, and every student addressed a different topic and had different questions. And, in a 3-hour classroom environment, I'm not sure that everyone would have felt the courage to speak up, to ask their question.
Exactly.
So, again, something is gained online and there's something lost, but it's just different.
I think that, you're sharing such interesting kind of a concept of what it means to be a teacher now.
Yeah.
Teaching is changing. It's moving to be more collaborative in the learning process, I think.
Yeah.
It needs to be, I think. My other question to you is, before we get into opening this up to everybody, is how has your philosophical underpinning had an impact on your world view? How you relate to other people. And then I'll leave it. I have a question other than a philosophical question, but
okay.
Yeah.
I'm really drawn to a school of thought called process relational philosophy.
Yeah, I was just getting into looking at that.
And it's, process implies that, knowledge is never finished, never complete. And relational is the idea that to gain knowledge and understanding of the world is to come into relationship. And the more relational, for me, rationality means relationality, rather than rationality meaning sort of disembodied, alienated gaze from the outside that gets the objective picture. Rationality, as I've come to understand and practice it, has more to do with coming into relationship with the beings, the persons, the organisms, the worlds that I'm trying to understand. And a relational way of knowing requires putting one's own identity at risk in the process of knowing. So it's not only that knowledge is a process, open-ended, never completed. My own identity is a process. It's constantly being transformed in my encounters with others. And for me, that's the foundation of any kind of inquiry, that it's a risky endeavor. You don't know what you're going to find, and you don't know how what you're going to find is going to change you. And that kind of old paradigm of knowledge that's about mastery is not risky at all. It assumes that knowledge is more about controlling something and keeping it at a distance so that you're not implicated in it, not participating in it, in the creation of something new.
What you're saying, though, is it feels like the world at this time, where people are segregated in their thinking and in their familiar settings, that's not being kind of approached that way. Are you seeing that? And just, when you turn the TV on and in the last couple of months, and how people are just so fractured and not taking the risk?
That's certainly what seems to be the case. I'm somewhat skeptical of the idea that what we see on TV and what the major media tell us is going on is actually what's going on. I think there's a distorted view, and I try to remain in touch with the people that I'm actually interacting with on a day-to-day basis. And, because of where I live, where Becca and I live in Berkeley, we can see some of these events firsthand that then make the national news.
Yes.
And what happens on the street is quite different from what gets onto the TV screen.
So the psychology of the media, it's really very interesting.
Yeah, they're trying to sell ad time, and so they want it to be as polarized and angry and etc. as possible. So I think we have new media now, social media, which takes some of the power away from that sort of mass media, where it's only a few networks that get to decide what everyone watches. Now, especially younger generations, they're creating their own media.
Yes.
They're watching content created by their friends and their networks. So that's good and bad. Because then you get also the fake news thing, who's adjudicating what counts as real news and what it's not. So there's been a tremendous democratization
Yes.
of media, and I believe very strongly in democracy as an idea, but it can be dangerous. We had an election recently that millions and millions of people voted for this person because they thought.
Can you speak up, man?
Yeah. Democracy can be dangerous. We don't know what sorts of mass-mindedness will possess large groups of people at any given time. But despite its danger, it's an ideal. I feel very strongly that we need to defend and protect. But we need voices who speak up in a persuasive enough way to avoid the polarization and demagoguery that can otherwise take over a democratic society.
So, my non-philosophical question. Where do you think CIIS will be in the next 50 years? We're celebrating 50 years next year. Will we survive this?
Yeah.
And how will we survive it?
I wish I knew the answer to that. When I think about higher education more generally and what the university has represented and how that's shifting now, I think CIS is actually well positioned to survive the challenges. We're small and nimble, we offer something unique, and I think we need to remember the uniqueness and not try to totally transform ourselves to fit into the standardized mold that the accreditors and the Department of Ed want us to fit into. We have to get accreditation, of course,
yes.
But I think we can do that and remain true to our own unique mission, which the idea of a spiritual but non-denominational university that is open to various perspectives and ways of knowing, traditions, is absolutely essential. And we all want to protect that, allow that to thrive. And I think there are plenty of people who need to know about us who probably don't right now,
Yes.
who would also want to join in that mission. I think the more distributed, horizontal, and participatory way of engaging in the educational process is something that will be attractive to people, because I think part of what is hurting the traditional university is this sort of what we're seeing in our country and around the world is this backlash against elitism. That traditional model of the expert who tells everyone else how it is. Take notes, and your test will be based on memorizing the information that I've given you as the expert. Breaking down that model, allowing students to take more initiative and responsibility for their own learning, I think is part of what makes us unique and attractive. And it's just a matter of us not being afraid to speak up about what makes us different. Instead of being shy and wondering if we're too weird or whatever, we should be proud of what distinguishes us, because that will be attractive. It makes us stand out.
Could you envision satellite CIISs all over the world?
Sure.
Not just virtually, but
Right.
our students being in different parts of the world and sharing.
Yeah, certainly. One idea that we're floating in the PCC program with the online degree is that instead of having the intensive be here and the students come to us, if we have enough students in Europe, say, we'll go to them, and find somewhere, nice retreat center or whatever, where they can host us in their training. And maybe eventually we'll have satellite campuses around the world.
Well, we said it first, right?
Yeah. Exactly. That's exciting. I like that idea.
I like that idea. Maybe. Let's open it up to questions. Yes, Chip.
If I may, I have a comment and a question.
Mm-hmm.
The comment just came up in the last few seconds because actually in the school that I got my doctorate from, which you're familiar with, Southeastern University, that's their model, right? They move clusters of students around the world and then bring the instructors to them. So there's face-to-face meetings once a month, all day, but it's the faculty that are coming to the students.
Right.
So I'm afraid we're not the first.
Yeah. Well,
Not the first, but
yeah, we don't have to be the first or the only. But
that's right. But bring our unique flavor to it.
My question is, Matt, I've always found you to be very calm, rational, and now I'm learning also that there's this introverted foundation.
Yeah.
And I've often thought, if there's a crisis, you'd be a good person to lead us through crisis because of that comment. So I'm wondering if you agree with that characterization, if it stems in part, maybe even in a large way, from your orientation towards studying philosophy, because perhaps where others would have a more segmented or even historical approach to our challenges, maybe we put all this into a larger context of philosophical. See possibility?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, a lot of times academic philosophers, professors of philosophy have a compartmentalized view where they have their personal lives over here and then they engage in philosophy as a more just an abstract pursuit, solving linguistic puzzles, logical puzzles, or what have you. But part of what drew me to PCC is this idea that philosophy is actually a way of life, and the way that you think should affect and really be integral with the way that you live. So, the idea of reality as process. I don't have any expectation that things will remain the same. It's no measure of success to me that things remain the same. If something's working now, great. It's not going to keep working that way forever. I don't have any illusions about that. So just being open to the idea that reality is continually unfolding. I'm constantly reflecting upon events that will happen in my life that change the course of where I'm headed, and recognize that, like, here now today, there's no telling what's going to happen tomorrow. And I can't prepare for the specific situation that might arise, but I can be prepared in the more general sense that change is inevitable. And, in terms of remaining calm, part of what drew me to philosophy as a way of life, and really as a spiritual tradition, is this idea that Socrates first articulated, that philosophy is learning to die. So the worst thing that could happen, normal way of thinking, is that I might die, or someone I love might die. But if death isn't sort of put off to the side and repressed, but just accepted as inevitable, then anything else that happens isn't as frightening, really. And it's an ongoing process, right? Learning to die. It's not like I figured it out, but that inquiry into death, it's just endlessly fascinating to me, and it contextualizes the rest of my life. It just helps me stay focused on things and not worry. Because, at the end, there's that mystery that sort of encompasses all of us, and we don't know what happens. And that's just the sort of background context that I carry with me all the time.
Thank you. Good question.
So I know about your kind of day job as a staff person and how demanding it must be. So I'm just curious if you find that a challenge to balance and wear both hats, or where they kind of clash with each other, or do you find that like they can inform and complement each other?
One of my missions is to bring together the faculty and administrative cultures, because I think there's a bit of a gap there and a lack of understanding and tendency to blame both directions. And I will, if I do become faculty one day, I will never forget the tireless work that administrators put in and how important it is to preparing and maintaining the space within the classroom that faculty and students rely upon. And it's so precious. That's what we're all here for. But a lot has to go on behind the scenes to make that happen. So I would love to have more time to spend during the week just working on my research, reading. I don't read as much as I used to. I feel lucky that when before I started working full time here, I was quite a bookworm and just never stopped. And I got to read a lot of the stuff that has helped form me. But new books are getting published every day, and it's hard to keep up. So I do regret not having more time for that, but I'll catch up eventually. Or in reality, I'll never catch up.
Yeah.
My Amazon wish list. Yeah.
But I love the way you're looking at integral education as the integration of administration and teaching. And I don't think we look at it quite that way. We think of integral and holistic, but not really the logistics of what that really means.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, we really do have to look at the whole student experience. And students will spend just as much time outside the classroom navigating various administrative offices as they do inside the classroom. When they have a bad experience outside the classroom, in the classroom, and vice versa. So it's the whole experience.
You're going to get a second dissertation? No? No.
No, that's never crossed my mind.
I've seen people do that. They love reading and inquiry so much that I've seen people take a second.
I've considered, I don't know about another PhD, but I've considered, I have an interest in the hard sciences, but I never formally studied mathematics or physics or anything, so I kind of have to read the books that the scientists write for a more popular audience and use my philosophical understanding to dig out the concepts that are at work there. But I'd love to go get a master's or something, or even just another BS degree in physics, or something interesting like climatology or whatever. So maybe one day when I have more time.
I'll say something. Well, I love these brown bags because it is great to get to know our colleagues, in many different ways. So thank you. And then, when you're introducing yourself, Matt, I just thought, I think I may have been one of the first dozen people or so that you talked to at CIIS, because I don't know if you remember, I interviewed you for a student position.
Yep, I do remember that.
And I was like, okay, this guy has it, but I have to, call Florida, make sure it's pretty cool. And then I did look your name up online, and I did find that you two were like, oh yeah, this is Florida, okay, what's this about? And and then as soon as you arrived, I don't think you actually ever did start your job with me, because it was just like, so I'm really glad that we're getting a lot of time together to work as colleagues on different projects, not, outside of, maybe a little bit outside of both of our, technical responsibilities here.
That's the story around here.
Anyway, no question. I was just commenting on that, because when you were introducing yourself, it just all came back to you.
Yeah, well, I remember that too.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly why I didn't end up working with you in the
I'm guessing it was just like the PCC community was just like,
Yeah.
You know?
I found my first little studio that I rented was cheap enough that I probably didn't need the extra. So. Anyone online have a question? You guys are welcome to participate here too.
Yeah, we have 3 people online with us. Let's see if they have a question. So you guys should be on TV. Okay, until they kind of speak up.
I could ask a question. So you do so much, it seems like, and a lot online. And I just am sort of curious as to whether or not you have any, like, I guess, self-care practices, or like how do you also orient yourself, because you sort of hit on it a second ago, when there's this pressure to know so much and to stay up to date. So I guess you could just speak to that.
Yeah, I don't have like a specific self-care. You know, I have a very loving partner who we help care for each other, but I'm lucky enough to just really love what I do. So, you know, as busy as I am, I don't feel taxed by it. I don't have many obligations. It's mostly play for me. I mean, you know, coming 9 to 5 every day can sometimes wear on me, but I love being here. And, you know, the job description's constantly sprawling, but everyone's nice enough and understanding enough that if it takes a little bit more time to finish something, it's fine. So I don't feel that pressure to meet the deadline. There's no anxiety about whether I'm moving fast enough. You know, I go at the pace that I can, and that's fine. And in terms of, you know, teaching online is actually more work.
Mm-hmm. It is.
But because I've been doing that kind of thing, blogging and on YouTube for years, I'm pretty efficient at it, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoy it. So, you know, Becca knows I sometimes am frustrated when I leave the building and didn't get to finish all the emails, and there's more meetings tomorrow, and when am I going to respond to these issues? But I think especially since taking this new job as the manager of the provost office, I've been way better at, you know, my hours are 8:30 to 4:30, and at 4:30, unless I know I have to expect an email that is important, I kind of leave it until the next morning. It's an important practice to maintain. Otherwise, I could get carried away. So I guess that's one of the self-care things. It's like work stays during the 8 hours that I'm here, and then focus on my course or, you know, life.
Yes.
Hi, Matt. I love the point that you were making earlier when you were talking about, you know, how when you really started using technology regularly and doing your YouTube videos, and you made that point about how in the beginning YouTube was not this huge, you know, monolithic sort of platform that it is now, but that it was very small scale and people were just creating small personalized videos. And it brought up a lot of nostalgia for me because I started blogging back in 2003 when blogging was very similar to that. I mean, everything was just personal journals and personal stories, people writing stories about their day and their life and, you know, commenting and sharing. And it really was a community in a real sense. You know, I mean, I gained so many real life friendships out of those online friendships. And I think one of the things, you know, over the years as technology has become so all-encompassing in our lives, I mean, I've seen, just as you have, how that sort of personal storytelling and sharing has changed, because I feel that, you know, YouTube videos now, Instagram posts, blogs, everything is so, it's all marketing now. You know, it's all advertising and marketing and kind of selling a product to your audience. And it's like people post things online for their followers to sell things to them or to gain commission from whatever they're writing about, whether it's interior design or philosophy or, you know, beauty products and all of that. And so I have a lot of nostalgia for the way things were in terms of how I think people of our generation started out using technology in such a personalized way. And I'm just curious about your thoughts on that, having been someone who started out on that sort of a personalized level of sharing and community building. And, you know, do you think that we will at some point cycle back around to a time like that? Or is technology just so prevalent and all encompassing now that it is just going to it's just going to continue on this trajectory that it is now, where there's less intimacy and personalization around what we share and how we talk about our lives, and more just kind of mass marketing?
You know, I think part of it is that because, you know, years ago there weren't as many people using these platforms, so there wasn't as much incentive to monetize and commercialize.
Yeah.
But once it reached a certain threshold, then Google or Facebook or whatever thought it all up and monetized it. And, you know, to what extent these huge companies will be encouraged or forced to let go of the monopoly that they have, that remains to be seen. But I find that I still can make those connections to people. I'm not as active on YouTube as I was, but I am on Twitter and Facebook, engaging in dialogue. And, you know, some of my posts are just for friends, and others are public because I want to actually talk to people and enter into dialogue across difference about the heated topics of our day. And I still meet people that I value the connection. So it hasn't gone away at that level. It's just been, there's a lot piled on top of it. So I don't feel like there are some people who I wish were still active, like on YouTube, who have decided that they can't do it anymore because, you know, they got one response, an angry response from some really popular YouTuber, and then they were just bombarded with their opinions attacking for months. It just wasn't worth it. So, you know, it's like what the internet facilitates, this network society. You know, it's got its light and its shadow, but there's no escaping it. So I'm not pulling the plug yet. I'm trying to hang in there and try to maintain a level of discourse that would be, I think, healthier and more diplomatic and more transparent, in the sense that, like, I'm not trying to hide my identity online, you know, and because I've found that people who are anonymous are not fun to hear from. You know, I'm not out there publicizing my address and my phone number and stuff, but just like, this is who I am, this is my face, let's talk. I think that's important, because then you're still people. You're not reducing yourself or reducing others to just a screen name or a political ideology or something.
It's just an interesting point, because I think back in the day when this type of social media, new technology was also new, everybody had, you know, screen names and sort of little customized ways of referring to themselves. Nobody ever used their full name, definitely not their last name.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I had my first name attached to my blog, but I never talked about my last name, where I lived. Now, with so much noise everywhere online, it's like you have to be more transparent about who you are in order to kind of filter yourself out from the crowd and all of that noise in order to create personal connections. So thank you. That's a great point.
Dan.
What ideas captured your imagination right now? And feel free to dumb it down for us if you want. I don't think I need to dumb it down. I'm preparing to teach a course in the spring called Process and Difference in the Pluriverse. And pluriverse is an alternative to universe, and it's a pluralistic way of understanding what this world is, or these worlds are that we live in and inhabit. And I'm really excited by some work being done by thinkers like Bruno Latour, who he's a French sociologist of science. So he studies scientists in the laboratory like anthropologists would study indigenous people, living in the jungles of the Amazon, to say that, oh, this is a culture too. They have their rituals and their strange practices, and at the end of it, they say they produce knowledge. And out of that study has come a philosophy that this thinker, Bruno Latour, has articulated, that rather than talking about just multiculturalism as a form of pluralism, he talks about multinaturalism. In other words, there are the way that modern people have thought about this for a few hundred years is that there's one nature known to science, and then there are multiple cultures that sort of exist within nature. And there's one culture that's really special, that has access to nature. That's the scientific culture. And all the other cultures have their own psychological projections and cultural weirdness that doesn't give them access to the way nature really is. That's the old idea. And what I'm fascinated by is this new approach to pluralism that suggests, and in a way it's scary, but I think it's more realistic, that actually there is no such thing as this unified nature known to science. Never has been. Science is its own local, situated culture that constructs a really powerful form of knowledge, but every culture constructs a powerful form of knowledge that has worked for them for as long as that culture has existed. And so we're in a situation where it's not that there are multiple cultures. Yes, there are also multiple worlds. And in order to figure out how to live together, we need to accept the fact that we inhabit different worlds. And how can we continue to inhabit those worlds that we each value in a way that doesn't encroach upon or harm other people's ability to live in their worlds? So the goal is no longer, can't we all, become one big happy family and live in the same one world? Maybe. I'm not against that, but that takes a lot of work of understanding others and being willing to give up something that we value to make room for others. I think that can still be a goal that we can strive for, that we'll all, arrive at some more or less unified understanding of the world. But that's not where we are now. And if we rush to that sense of unification, we'll do a great deal of violence along the way to get there. And much of the last several hundred years of colonialism, industrialization, and so on has been violent because it's rushing to that unity when we're not quite there yet. So I'm still thinking through all the implications of this idea that there are multiple worlds, that reality itself is plural. I don't know all the implications yet, but I like to think through them, and my course next semester will be exploring that with whoever's brave enough to enroll in it, because it's going to be an adventure.
And you're going to be looking at several different philosophers. Feminist philosophy.
Yeah.
I know I checked it out.
Yeah.
Should I take this class? W.E.B. Du Bois looking at double consciousness. Yeah. That's going to be a heavy class.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's the idea of hybrid identity.
Yes.
We're all so mixed up. We've got so much in us. I'm fascinated by
this phenomenon that everyone now is going to like 23andMe or Ancestry.com,
Mhm.
getting their genome, and being surprised by the results. So when people ask, I hate these forms where you have to fill out, like, of course, socially in my positionality, I'm white, and I gain the privilege from being called white. But I don't feel like that actually represents the hybrid that I am, culturally and biologically. And I think part of this movement to uncover the plurality of reality is to examine ourselves and to see the various lineages that feed into each one of us, and the unique way that we construct who we are in relationship to others.
Yes.
Group identity is important, crucial for helping us discover that. And each one of us is so unique that it sometimes can be, it's like the violence of abstraction to think that I'm really a member of this or that group versus I'm a unique individual. They can't be reduced. So yeah, I'm carefully, sensitively trying to explore these ideas. So I think pluralism is really important in how we articulate its meaning. It's really important.
And that leads to our last 5 minutes, where I have a chance to introduce Matt as the next co-host for the Brown Bag Lunch series. I asked because I wanted to try something different and have different people sitting here from their own positionality, having a conversation. And I thought about you because I've been watching you. And I love your quietness. I think that you're holding so many different ways of being and learning and existing. And I think your questions will be amazing to our next guest. And so for the rest of the fall, Matt will be the host of the Brown Bag Lunch series.
Yeah. So we've got Kathy Lewis.
We've got Kathy Lewis.
We've got Dan Gerler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how do you feel about switching positions here and what this could mean for you and for the folks who will be sitting in that seat?
I love interviewing people. I've done it a bit for public programs, and I've done it online a little bit in the past. And it's just a lot of fun for me to get to know someone in a public forum. So I'm just privileged. I feel very privileged that you asked and honored, and looking forward to it.
Sounds great. And then I can observe and watch because I'm not going anywhere. Because I think our community needs to have many different voices in conversation. And this can encourage maybe students to have their own Brown Bag Lunch series. I would love to see students interviewing each other. So we're going to take this to other levels where we can really have a community building setting where we talk across fields and disciplines.
That's great.
So thank you for saying yes so seamlessly.
Denise, anything to take it off your plate, I'm happy to do it.
Yes.
You're a busy woman around here. So.
Yes. So thank you.
You're welcome.
This is beautiful. Let's thank him.